Chapter 6, The Start of Something New. Quila Tash. Wake up, Arden, I said. The porridge is going to get cold. Arden rolled on his bunk and pulled at his blanket. His face twisted as he yawned. If he did not have a pretty face, I would never have grown fond of him. He could be so irritating at times. Although, even with his callous ways, I knew he had some gentleness inside of him too. I kicked his butt, and he was immediately up. "What did you do that for?" he snapped, obviously irritated. My eyes twinkled in merriment. His hair was standing on ends, and yet he still looked handsome. "It's our first day to explore the woods," I said. "Aren't you excited?" I asked, unable to hide the eagerness. "No." He scrunched his face. "You're always excited about everything," he grumbled. His tone never upset me, though. I ladled some porridge into a soup bowl and handed it to him. "Here, eat so we can go on the adventure. You promised me yesterday you'll find me a wild horse today. Or a cow." Arden grabbed one of the wooden spoons and gobbled up the food, making loud, slurping sounds. Cows are hard to come by in the forest. There are no more wild cows. Nowadays, everything is spoken for. I'm sure we can still find something to tame. We need help carrying our packs. Maybe we can use some of the gold coins to buy us a horse. Arden pointed a finger at me. "No," he said, shaking his head vehemently. "Not the gold coins. Don't get any ideas. I have big dreams for those coins. We'll save them up, and when we have enough, we can put up a traveling show. We'll be famous." "I thought you wanted to keep a low profile," I said. Arden blushed. "Well, I do too. But of course, I still have dreams for us. If the crowd would want us to perform for them, why should we deny their requests? Besides, everything is worth pursuing for a price." I liked the way he said us. "Seriously though, let's buy a horse. Or a donkey. I think it would cost less. Something that we can use when we travel." I sat in front of him, holding my bowl of porridge. It tasted like it had been cooked using seawater. "You need the exercise," Arden said, and then he laughed as he slurped on the soupy porridge. "You are just plain bad," I hissed. Arden kept on laughing. "Where's your sense of humor?" I frowned. I used to like bickering with Arden, but my crush had developed into something bigger than just admiration over the years. I mean, who would not like him so much? He has great power. He is a magician, and when he performs, the audience stares at him with admiration. I used to think that it was because of what he could do, slicing things with air, but it was never because of that. His golden hair, sleek and straight and always shining, framed his beautiful face atop a chiseled body. That was what it has always been about. I tried ignoring Arden. Lately, his laughter began to sound like music to me. I blushed furiously. I was never supposed to like him so much. But here we are. "Don't worry, as soon as we get more gold coins, we're going to buy you a horse," he said matter-of-factly that I believed him. His eyes grew serious, and they blazed blue like the sky at me. When he looked at me in this way, I could not help myself but drown in his gaze. I sat still and fell silent. "All right," I finally said and continued eating. I had always been proud of myself for being able to express myself clearly. I was a person of self-expression, of a million words, and yet, when Arden talked to me like he was doing now, I stumbled over my own words. Finished eating, he stood up and ran his fingers over his golden locks. Then he grabbed his hat and put it on. His finger tipped the corner of the hat so that only his right eye showed through the brim. He smiled. "Let's go," he said. "Where are we going?" I asked. "I thought you said you wanted an adventure. Then let's go before I change my mind." My smile turned into a grin. "Right at your back," I yelled before quickly picking up a hat of my own. In front of us, there was a pond with such clear water that you could almost see what was at the bottom. When I gazed down over it, I caught my reflection beside Arden, and I instantly felt giddy. We looked good together. If he could only see that. I was with that thought when Arden playfully dipped his hand into the water, only to whisk it towards my direction. "Hey! Grow up," I said. "Will you please try to be serious sometimes?" Arden laughed. "I always am. But I don't want to grow old so soon." I thought you said you wanted to put on some age so you could court the beautiful queen we saw in Loondu. Arden blushed and looked at me in surprise. You talk in your sleep sometimes, I said mockingly. He lay on the ground and covered his face with his hat, with only his chin showing. Forget about the queen. I don't have any intentions of seeing her again. That's not what you said when you were dreaming the other night, I teased. Ooh, Your Majesty, you're so beautiful. Why don't we run away from this town? Quit it. Arden yelled, obviously annoyed. I laughed hysterically and used my power to make my voice shrill and girly. Then I changed my voice so that it was deep like Arden's and continued taunting him some more. Arden got up and stripped down to his underpants before he dived into the water. Watch the coins, he shouted from the pond. His head was submerged in an instant, swimming with the fishes. I sat down on the bank and dipped my feet in the water. It was cool and refreshing, and the day was still young. Today was one of those days when the birds chirp and the leaves rustle, and suddenly my mind is transported elsewhere to a farm far, far away where Arden and I could spend our days, growing old together and with children of our own. His head bobbed from the water, and his golden hair covered his forehead. He was smiling widely now. You know what? You could use a bath too, he yelled. Leave it to him to always ruin my dreams. Shut up. I have jasmine scents on my dress, didn't you know? I was about to yell at him again when some voices caught my attention. They were hard to figure out because of all the chirping the birds made. And yet, there was such urgency in the voices that I was left with no choice but to stand from where I was sitting and slowly follow the source of the voices. Along the way, I grabbed the pouch of gold coins and tucked it into my belt. I crouched down, and the sounds led me to a clearing where several people frantically moved about. Quickly now, the woman said, her face hidden by a cloak. There were 2 children who were probably about the same age as I was. A girl and I was not sure, probably a boy. His hair was too long, and there was something odd about the way he moved. What are you looking at? Arden's voice whispered from behind me as he popped his head of wet locks beside mine. I elbowed him to make my point, pressing a finger to my lips. He was buttoning his shirt now. Who are they? That is one beautiful woman, he whispered. Who are you looking at? The cloaked woman. You can see that from here? He actually smiled. I can tell pretty when I see it, he boasted. I sighed. Stop looking at her like that. She's old enough to be our mother, I said. He shrugged. I never said I would court her. I have an eye for beauty, though, he said. He finished buttoning his shirt. Pants were another issue. The girl leaned on the ground over a mound which turned out to be a person too. What's that? I whispered to Arden, my interest now obviously piqued. An imp. They bound an imp, he said softly as though sensing some kind of trouble. Why would they do that? There's no time to ask now. I wasn't raised to be a coward, Arden said before jumping out of the bushes that we were hiding from. He ran towards the imp and stopped right in front of the girl. Arden tugged at his waist as though he was wielding a sword, although when he thrust his hand out to the girl, he was not holding anything. Don't. Arden warned. Not one step closer, he hissed. The girl stood up and moved towards the odd boy. What are you doing? She said. Protecting the ones who need protection, Arden replied. The girl giggled, and the woman did too. Only the boy remained motionless. Arden put his hand back to his waist as though placing a sword back into the scabbard. What's wrong? What's so funny? He asked. You, the girl said. If anybody needed protecting, that's us. 3 against 1. That's hardly believable, Arden said. Well, you have to see for yourself, the girl said before stepping towards the imp again. She rested her hands on the imp's chest. I stepped out of the bushes and moved towards Arden. The boy looked at me curiously as though sensing trouble. His eyes freaked me out. The girl was looking worriedly at the imp as though trying to wake him up. Then something amazing happened. The imp opened his eyes and sat up as if life had sprung from him. He coughed until his eyes were watery. What did you do to me? The imp asked gutturally. You should be thankful, the woman with the beautiful face said. Then she motioned for the 2 youngsters. Let's go. Wait. Arden yelled. What was that, huh? Are you some sort of a? Mind your own business, And quit bothering us, the woman said before grabbing the teens and quickly walking away, leaving me with the imp. Arden scurried after them. I jumped to my feet and hurried after the group. Wait up, I shouted. The woman turned to us. Please, let us have our leave, she said. Arden was staring at her. Then he laughed. Let you have your leave? He laughed even harder. Are we in a palace? Do you think we're royalty? He said. I had to suppress my laughter. The woman blushed, and she kept dragging the teens away. Upon closer examination of their faces, it suddenly occurred to me. The youngsters looked exactly the same. You're twins. I gasped. Yeah, so what? Haven't you seen twins before? The girl retorted, probably mad that Arden was still laughing. No, I'm sorry. I know it's rude to stare. It's like there are two of you, and yet, I did not know what to say. Arden blushed. I'm sorry, but you can't leave like this, he said. Why not? We'll leave. That imp was harassing us, the woman said. Do you expect us to believe that, my lady? Arden said. This time, he used his charming tone, and I could tell it worked. The lady paused and regarded him with much interest. So, you know your manners when the situation calls for it, she said sternly. It was Arden's turn to blush. The three walked away again without even looking back. We're not going to let you go without explaining to us what happened, Arden said. Nobody owes you an explanation, the woman exclaimed without looking back. By then, they were now practically sprinting. Arden and I had to run after them to catch up. Arden reached out to touch the woman's elbow. Please, my lady, we are being rather rude, but please accept our apologies. What this girl did back there was unfathomable, and I wish to hear an explanation. The lady looked at Arden coldly, and she twisted to free her elbow, but Arden's grip was like steel. The boy moved towards Arden, staring at him with open hatred. Miro, no. The girl shouted. I did not know what was happening until Arden gasped for breath and fell to the ground within seconds. I dropped to my knees, facing Arden. Arden, no. I yelled. I clutched at his lifeless head and shook it. Please wake up. Please wake up. I kept on repeating. Tears sprung from the corners of my eyes. The girl knelt beside me and took Arden's head. She had the gall to clutch his head against her chest. She looked up at her twin and shook her head. Please, Miro, you've got to stop doing this, she said. She laid Arden's head on her lap and put her hands to his chest. Her eyes were tightly closed. In a few moments, Arden was coughing hard. He kept on gasping for air as though making up for his lost ones. What did you do? I shrieked. What did you do to him? Please, leave us alone, the lady said. Her face was ashen as she grabbed the teens again and ran away from us. This time, there was no chance for Arden and me to follow them. Arden was now sitting on the earth, shocked at what had happened. Did I die? He asked, worried. I stared at his pale face. He looked the same, sounded the same. Thank the gods you're all right. Oh, Arden, I thought you were gone from my life forever, I said feebly. I was so scared, I added, brushing away my tears. Then how did I come back to life? He said in a trance. The girl, she seemed to have pumped life into your heart again, I stammered. Arden looked at the part of the woods where the three had vanished. I locked eyes with Arden and tightly embraced him. Don't you ever die on me again, I said. Don't. Just don't. Arden did not answer. The trauma was still evident in his frightened face. Her hands felt so soft against my chest. That was the first memory I had when I woke up, he said in awe. She was also quite pretty in a weird morbid way, I guess, he said. I eyed him hatefully. You and girls. I hate you, Arden, I said, releasing him from my arms. Arden chuckled. She gave me back my life, he said, as though telling it to himself. His eyes were still fixed to that part of the woods where the three vanished. Don't forget that it was her twin who killed you, I warned, but he did not seem to hear me. It was as though it was irrelevant. But it was definitely not. Dear gods, no, Arden could not possibly like her. We'll find out who they are some way or another, he whispered to himself as he bent to pick up his hat. And the imp? He's not important. I stared at Arden, afraid that I might be losing him to someone else. I embraced him again. Promise me, whatever happens, you're not going to leave me. Arden laughed and ran his hand over my hair. He even tucked some strands to the back of my ears before kissing the top of my head. I won't, chum, he said, smiling. Then wickedly, he added, come, let's go after them. He was free from my embrace so soon that holding him moments ago already felt like a memory. Whoever those three were, they were not going to take Arden away from me.